From Grocer's daughter to Iron Lady, discover how Margaret Thatcher shattered every barrier to become Britain's most powerful prime minister, transforming a declining nation into an economic powerhouse while becoming the most loved and hated leader of her generation. This is the ultimate story of conviction, courage, and controversial change.
Margaret Thatcher, the Iron Lady who transformed Britain in a cramped flat above a small grocery shop in Grantham, Lincolnshire. A determined young girl helped her father weigh goods and serve customers while absorbing his lectures about hard work, self-reliance, and the moral value of earning one's way in the world. Completely unaware that these lessons learned behind a shop counter would one day drive her to dismantle Britain's post-war consensus and reshape an entire nation through the sheer force of her uncompromising will. This wasn't just any ambitious daughter of a small-town shopkeeper, this was Margaret Hilda Roberts, who would transform herself from provincial grocer's daughter into Margaret Thatcher, the Iron Lady whose 11 years as Prime Minister would revolutionize British politics, economics, and society while making her simultaneously the most loved and most hated political figure of her generation. Born on October 13, 1925, in Grantham, a small market town in Lincolnshire that embodied traditional English values of thrift, industry, and respectability, Margaret entered a world where class distinctions were rigid but social mobility was possible through hard work, education, and unwavering determination to better oneself. Her birth into the lower middle class during the interwar period meant she grew up understanding both the aspirations of working people and the disciplines required to rise above humble circumstances. Her father, Alfred Roberts, owned a small grocery shop and served as a Methodist lay preacher, combining commercial success with moral authority in ways that profoundly influenced Margaret's understanding of the relationship between economic activity and ethical behavior. Alfred's dual role as businessman and religious leader taught her that making money was not only respectable but morally virtuous when conducted honestly and with concern for community welfare, laying the foundation for her later belief that free market economics served both individual and social good. Her mother, Beatrice Roberts, was a dressmaker whose quiet competence and domestic efficiency provided the stable foundation that allowed Alfred to pursue his business and civic activities while also demonstrating to Margaret that women could be both professionally skilled and devoted to family responsibilities. Beatrice's example showed that female capability extended far beyond conventional domestic roles while also maintaining that family obligations remained central to women's identity and social function. The Roberts household was characterized by discipline, education, and the Protestant work ethic that emphasized personal responsibility, moral behavior, and the belief that individual effort determined life outcomes more than circumstances of birth or social advantages. Margaret absorbed these values through daily exposure to her parents' example, their conversations about business and community affairs, and their consistent emphasis that success required continuous effort and moral rectitude rather than luck or social connections. Her childhood during the Great Depression of the 1930s provided first-hand experience of economic hardship and social distress while also demonstrating how individual businesses and community institutions could survive difficult times. Through careful management, mutual support, and refusal to surrender to circumstances beyond immediate control. These lessons about resilience, prudent financial management, and community self-reliance would later inform her approaches to both personal career building and national economic policy. Her education at Kesteven and Grantham Girls' School revealed academic excellence combined with natural leadership abilities that set her apart from her contemporaries while also reinforcing her belief that merit should determine advancement rather than social background or gender expectations. Her teachers recognized exceptional intelligence and drive, but also noted the intensity and competitive spirit that would characterize her entire approach to professional and political life. The decision to study chemistry at Somerville College, Oxford, represented both personal ambition and family sacrifice, as university education for women was still relatively rare and expensive for families of modest means. Her father's support for her educational aspirations demonstrated his belief that individual potential should be developed regardless of gender, while also requiring financial commitment that emphasized the importance of making the most of opportunities that others had made possible. Oxford in the 1940s exposed Margaret to intellectual and social environments far removed from provincial Grantham while also confirming her belief that academic achievement and personal discipline could overcome any disadvantages of background or gender. Her involvement in university conservative politics provided early experience in political debate and party organization, while also connecting her with networks of ambitious young people who shared her beliefs about individual responsibility and limited government. Her undergraduate thesis on X-ray crystallography demonstrated scientific capability and attention to detail that would later characterize her approach to policy development and political strategy. The discipline required for scientific research, careful observation, logical analysis, and evidence-based conclusions, provided intellectual training that proved invaluable when applied to economic and political problems throughout her career. Her early career as a research chemist at BX Plastics provided professional experience in industrial research while also exposing her to the practical challenges facing British manufacturing during the post-war period. This work gave her first-hand understanding of how scientific innovation, efficient management, and market competition could drive economic growth, while also revealing the obstacles that excessive regulation and union interference could place in the way of productive enterprise. Her marriage to Dennis Thatcher in 1951 provided both personal happiness and financial security that made possible her transition from chemistry to law and eventually to politics. Dennis's success in the family paint and chemicals business demonstrated entrepreneurial achievement, while his unwavering support for Margaret's ambition showed that traditional marriage could accommodate wives with professional and political aspirations beyond conventional domestic roles. The birth of twins Carol and Mark in 1953 created the ongoing challenge of balancing motherhood with professional ambitions, requiring Margaret to develop the organizational skills and time management abilities that would later prove essential in political leadership. Her approach to parenting, like her approach to everything else, emphasized discipline, high expectations, and the belief that children benefited from clear standards and consistent expectations rather than indulgence or lowered expectations. Her qualification as a barrister specialized in tax law provided legal training that enhanced her understanding of how government policies affected individual and business behavior, while also developing her skills in argument, advocacy, and the interpretation of complex regulations. This legal background proved invaluable in political debate and policy development, where precise language and logical argument could determine the success or failure of legislative initiatives. Her early attempts to secure a parliamentary seat demonstrated both the difficulties facing women in conservative politics and her determination to overcome gender-based resistance through superior preparation, unwavering commitment, and the ability to articulate party positions more clearly and forcefully than her male competitors. Her eventual selection for the safe Conservative seat of Finchley in 1959 represented triumph over both gender prejudice and political competition from more established candidates. Her maiden speech in Parliament advocated for her private member's bill requiring local authorities to hold meetings in public, demonstrating her belief that government transparency and public accountability were essential elements of democratic governance. This early legislation established themes of open government and public scrutiny that would characterize her entire political career, while also showing her ability to identify practical reforms that served both conservative principles and broader public interests. Her rapid advancement through junior ministerial positions during the 1960s revealed both exceptional administrative competence and political instincts that impressed senior colleagues, while also generating resistance from those who found her intensity and directness difficult to work with. Her tenure as Education Secretary from 1970 to 1974 involved implementing budget cuts that earned her the nickname the Milk Snatcher, while also demonstrating her willingness to make unpopular decisions when she believed they served long-term national interests. The leadership contest for the Conservative Party in 1975 represented the ultimate test of her political skills and strategic thinking, as she challenged and defeated the establishment candidate Edward Heath despite being considered an outsider with limited support from party grandees. Her victory demonstrated that political success could come through appealing directly to party members and MPs rather than relying on traditional networks of influence and patronage. Her emergence as Conservative leader during Britain's economic crisis of the mid-1970s provided the platform for developing and articulating the economic and political philosophy that would define her approach to government. Her embrace of monetarist economics, privatization, and reduced government intervention represented a fundamental challenge to the post-war consensus that had dominated British politics since 1945. The preparation for the 1979 general election involved not just policy development but also personal transformation, as Margaret worked with voice coaches, image consultants, and political advisors to develop the communication skills and public presence necessary for television-age politics. Her ability to adapt to changing media requirements while maintaining her core message showed the pragmatic flexibility that accompanied her ideological convictions. Her victory in the 1979 general election, becoming Britain's first female prime minister, represented both personal triumph and national turning point, as her government embarked on the most comprehensive economic and social reforms undertaken in Britain since the creation of the welfare state. Her famous quotation of St. Francis of Assisi on the steps of Downing Street, "Where there is discord, may we bring harmony," would prove ironic given the divisiveness that would characterize her entire tenure. The early years of her government were marked by economic recession, rising unemployment, and social unrest that tested both her policies and her political survival, as traditional conservative supporters questioned whether monetarist economics and reduced government spending were appropriate responses to economic crisis. Her refusal to change course, famously declaring the ladies not for turning, demonstrated the personal resolve that would define her leadership style throughout her career. The Falklands War in 1982 transformed both Margaret's political fortunes and her international reputation, as her decision to send a naval task force 8,000 miles to recapture the islands from Argentine occupation demonstrated British resolve while also showcasing her personal courage and strategic judgment. The successful military campaign established her credentials as a war leader while also reinforcing her belief that firm action backed by military force could achieve political objectives that seemed impossible through diplomacy alone. The miners' strike of 1984 to 1985 represented the defining domestic conflict of her tenure, as her government's confrontation with the National Union of Mineworkers became a test of whether elected governments or trade union leaders would determine economic policy. In modern Britain, her victory over the miners, achieved through careful preparation, strategic stockpiling, and unwavering determination to break union power, fundamentally altered the balance of power between government and organized labor. The privatization program that transferred major industries from government ownership to private shareholders represented perhaps her most significant long-term contribution to British economic structure, creating a new class of small shareholders while also improving the efficiency and competitiveness of formerly state-owned enterprises. The success of privatizations like British Telecom and British Gas demonstrated that government assets could be transferred to private ownership while serving public interests and generating substantial revenues for the Treasury. Her relationship with Ronald Reagan created a transatlantic alliance that reinforced both leaders' commitment to free market economics and strong defense while also providing Margaret with enhanced international influence that compensated for Britain's reduced global power. The Reagan-Thatcher partnership demonstrated how personal chemistry between leaders could enhance national relationships while also advancing shared ideological objectives. The Brighton bombing in 1984, when the IRA attempted to assassinate her and her cabinet during the Conservative Party conference, tested her physical courage and political resolve while also demonstrating the personal risks faced by political leaders during the Northern Ireland conflict. Her decision to continue with the conference schedule despite the attack showed the personal bravery that earned respect even from political opponents while also reinforcing her reputation for determination under pressure. Her role in ending the Cold War, through her early recognition of Mikhail Gorbachev as a Soviet leader with whom the West could do business, demonstrated strategic insight and diplomatic skill that complemented her reputation as an uncompromising ideological warrior. Her contribution to Western unity during the final phase of the Cold War showed that principled leadership could help achieve historical objectives that had seemed impossible for previous generations. The poll tax controversy that ultimately led to her downfall demonstrated both the limits of political power and the dangers of pursuing unpopular policies without adequate consultation or preparation. Her insistence on implementing a flat-rate local tax that many considered unfair showed how ideological conviction could override political prudence while also revealing that even successful leaders could make catastrophic errors of judgment. Her resignation in 1990, forced by cabinet colleagues who believed she had become an electoral liability, represented both personal tragedy and political necessity, as the Conservative Party chose pragmatic survival over loyalty to the leader who had transformed both party and nation. Her tearful departure from Downing Street marked the end of an era while also beginning the process of evaluating her complex legacy. Her later years were marked by continued political intervention, international speaking engagements, and memoir writing that sought to defend her record while also influencing contemporary political debates about economic policy and international relations. Her development of Alzheimer's disease in her final years provided a poignant contrast to the intellectual sharpness that had defined her political career, while also demonstrating the universal vulnerability that affects even the most powerful individuals. Her death in 2013 provoked national debates about her legacy that revealed the continuing divisions her policies had created, as supporters celebrated her transformation of Britain while critics condemned the social costs of her economic reforms. Her funeral, attended by world leaders and marked by both ceremony and protest, demonstrated the enduring controversy surrounding her record while also acknowledging her historical significance. The evaluation of Margaret Thatcher's legacy continues to evolve as historians and political scientists assess both the successes and failures of her policies while also examining their long-term consequences for British society and politics. Her transformation of the Conservative Party, her role in ending the post-war consensus, and her influence on international politics ensure that she remains a subject of serious academic study and popular fascination. Her influence on subsequent political leaders, both Conservative and Labour, demonstrated how successful politicians could reshape national political discourse while also establishing new parameters for what was considered politically possible. Her example showed that determined leadership could achieve fundamental changes that seemed impossible when undertaken by less committed politicians. Today, Margaret Thatcher is remembered as the political leader who proved that ideological conviction, personal determination, and strategic skill could transform entire nations when combined with favorable historical circumstances and electoral mandate. Her story demonstrates that individual leadership can indeed alter the course of national development while also revealing the personal costs and social divisions that such transformation inevitably creates. From Grocer's daughter to Iron Lady, her journey proves that social mobility remains possible in democratic societies when individual talent meets historical opportunity, while also showing that the exercise of political power requires both vision and pragmatism, conviction and flexibility, if it is to achieve lasting change rather than temporary success.
Thatcher proved that unwavering conviction can transform entire nations. Love her or hate her, she showed that determined leadership can achieve impossible changes when backed by electoral mandate. Subscribe for more powerful political stories, like If Strong Leadership Inspires You. Share your thoughts on her legacy.